Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink. It is time for some PathOfExile discussion. Welcome to day 11 of teaser season for patch 3.25 and the upcoming Settlers of Kalguur expansion. Today we got one piece of news that is pretty substantial because there's a lot hidden in it. There's a quality of life change that's being made whereby information about what divination cards drop in which map zone is going to be available just by hovering over the map on the atlas. However, this is not the big information that's in this teaser. The big information is some of those changes that are taking place to which maps drop which divination cards. Now firstly, it's worth noting that there is actually a mistake in this video, and that is that the Voidstone spots on the atlas, those were omitted by mistake. They are intended to be there, and so there's nothing to read into about the removal of Voidstones or anything along those lines. So if we want to have a look at something that's a reasonably inconsequential change, for Grotto map currently does drop the Primordial, but it can drop it at any map tier. In fact, the Primordial's minimum drop level is actually coded into the game at only 23 in patch 3.24. In 3.25, it's going to require map tier 12 plus. Who knows whether there's any other changes going alongside that. Additionally, a Sea of Blue, the Tinkerer's Table, and Terrible Secret of Space are being tied to the Grotto map as well. And it'll be interesting to see whether Terrible Secret of Space remains boss only, or whether it's something that's now available from every monster in the map. But we've started with the Grotto map. There are some much more significant things when we have a look over at Burial Chambers. Name a more iconic duo in PathOfExile than the Doctor Divination card and the Burial Chambers map. This has been that card's home for pretty much forever in PathOfExile. Even though the Divination card, the Fortunate, was recently added to Burial Chambers, most people first think of Doctor when they're thinking of Burial Chambers. Well, interestingly, it looks like the Doctor might not be in Burial Chambers anymore. We can see here that Brother's Gift, which does not currently drop in Burial Chambers, is going to be in that map. The Summoner, Cursed Words, if it's map tier 5+, and the Brawny Battle Mage for map tier 13+. There is no sign of the Doctor whatsoever. And then we have Glacier Map, which has Mitts, Whiteout, the Wolverine, and a Chilling Wind. And Poorjoy's Asylum has the Army of Blood, the Thaumaturgist, the Fiend, and the Golden Era. So what we can tell from this is that there are some big changes to what divination cards drop where within PathOfExile. I'm assuming that we'll get much more thoroughgoing information about this when the patch notes come out in about 3 days' time. It'll be interesting to see if this totally revolutionises the meta, and whether we'll still see a situation where the best divination card in the game for farming, which is often the Apothecary, is also in the same maps as some of the other best divination cards for late league farming, which is the varying divination cards that grant mirror shards, such as 7 Years Bad Luck. It would not surprise me at all if all the divination cards that grant tier 0 uniques, so things like the Doctor, things like the Apothecary, if these are being moved somewhere special that's harder to juice, but we'll have to find that information out when the patch notes come out. Now, one thing I did do is come up with a whole bunch of questions related to this functionality that I'd like to see some answers to, because some of these are being asked a lot, some of them are just corner cases that I think would be useful for grinding your games to put out an answer to in an FAQ at some point. The first one, and the most frequently asked question about this, is can we turn this off if we don't want it? So is this something that's going to always show up if you hover over Burial Chambers, or do you need to hold Alt in order for it to do so? This is something that could be quite annoying, especially when you're completing your atlas at the start of the league. You're not yet into a divination card farming routine, but you just want to find out which maps are on your atlas that you haven't yet completed and the ones you might want to trade for. If you're in that situation, can you just get rid of this information for now? The second thing, can we use the search bar at the top of the atlas to search for a specific divination card? If I was to type Brother's Gift in that search bar, would it show Burial Chambers? Or would that not be considered something that's tied to the map? This functionality does exist for Pantheon bosses, so it would be something that's useful for divination cards. The third question is what happens with maps that are not on the atlas? For example, the Citadel map, one of the tier 17s. That's not on the atlas. Is that something that we can find out information about the divination cards that drop there this way? Hall of the Grandmasters and the Pit of the Chimera are never on the atlas. Is that something that we can find out information for? And if you happen to play in Standard, you might have a legacy map that is not available in the current league, but that may still exist. Can you find out this information about those? Fourth question for the FAQ. There are some divination cards in 3.24 that drop exclusively from certain map bosses. For example, the divination card for Cosprey's Malice, which did show up in this video as something that drops in Glacier Map now. Will those be marked if they are map boss exclusive? Will we be able to find that out by hovering over the map? And finally, is there any information for cards that drop from non-map sources? For example, if I recall correctly, the divination card Heroic Shot drops from certain strongboxes only. That is the sort of divination card information that's not going to show up with this system. Is that intended to be a secret that players have to work out, or is that information going to be provided somewhere? Anyways, that's the information that's setting off a lot of speculation as to where divination cards are going to drop in the future. It's a quiet day today, so I'm going to leave it there. May your Vaal Orbs have interesting results.